What if astrology isn't something that tells you about who you are, but it's a tool to help you become who you came here to be? I'm Laurie Rivers, and today on the Awake Space Astrology podcast, using your astrology series, we're talking about Saturn and why Saturn isn't just the big bad wolf in astrology, and why it isn't just the drill sergeant or the great teacher, but a vehicle for you to create foundations in your life. That's what we're talking about today. So, you know the drill, whether we're going to work, folding the laundry, putting the dishes away, thinking about what we're going to have on Thanksgiving, or preparing to deck the halls, or get the Yule log, or do whatever you do in December. We're going to do it together. So get your tea, get your coffee, get your matcha, get your Red Bull, get your H2O, because we've got things to talk about. A lot of what is discussed about Saturn is, again, like urban myth. It doesn't really tell us a whole lot about how Saturn operates in your own chart. Here's the deal. Not all pop astrology is completely wrong, but it's limited in its scope. It's very easy to tell you struggled, you had difficulty with a parent. Very few people have perfect relationships with their parents. And the ones who claim it often don't want to examine what needs to be repaired and healed, because not one human being is perfect. Not one. Saturn is about structure. Saturn governs the bones of your body. And without the bones of your body, we'd be gelatinous blobs of goo. We need that structure to have a range of motion. And Saturn in the natal chart shows a couple of things. It shows the type of structure you prefer. It shows the area of life that's kind of your foundation that you put an emphasis on. Remember, the last episode we talked about Jupiter magnifying an area of life. The house where Saturn resides is kind of a foundation for you. And using your Mercury and your mindset on how you view that foundation, because I could just about hear all the 8th house Saturns going, mine is on grief or loss or abandonment or neglect or whatever it is. And it can be, absolutely, if that's where your focus is. But it could be. I had to learn how to create support structures around myself, because the one I had was not long lasting. Notice a reframe helps restore or reinforce that important foundation. Saturn represents our discipline. And it represents our ambitions, and it represents where we get in our own way and create roadblocks for ourselves. Because both Jupiter and Saturn are what we call the social planets. They are our social cultural conditioning, which we have to unlock and deconstruct before we can be utterly deliberate. Because it's kind of like having trip wires in our mind. Because a lot of this is super subconscious. We can see the things we don't agree with. It's really easy to say, I don't agree with the subjugation of women. And then go back and look at your decisions where you actually subjugated yourself. Anybody? Anybody? Just me? Just me? Because some of these things they're insidious. Ideas about what our worth is, our value, where our authority lies. All of these things have to be deconstructed. It doesn't mean it has to take the entirety of your lifetime to gain a better pathway and get traction. Not at all. But a lot of it is super subconscious, because that's what indoctrination does. Have you ever felt a visceral reaction? You think of doing something, and then you either get a clutch in your chest, or a little bit of anxiety zings you, or you get a lump in your throat, and you're like, man, where'd that come from? I know I can do this. Why am I stuck? And that's because the socially conditioned energy is running the show. We get to change those polarities, right? We can move into a more self-determined, but you got to massage it. You got to massage it. It's not something you can jump from an instinctual or social conditioning, consciousness into deliberate right away, because you're going to hit resistance and it's going to bounce back. And Saturn will show you what your resistance patterns look like as well, whether they're physical, emotional, mental, whether it hits you in the health sector, or it hits you in your needing support psychologically or emotionally, or in your relationships. It'll show that. And that's what the astrologers at Woke Astrology work with people all the time on. Susie is an immense healing force as an astrologer. She is able to tune into that astrology and help you find your pathways to connecting with the emotions that move you forward, while honoring the ones that have kept you stuck. Immensely talented facilitator of healing. Damien helps you write the story of you so you can go on your journey with the best equipment and the best self-understanding. And Shelby, she leans into your potential with precision and gives you guidance on how to take action on that. Each one of the astrologers at wokeastrology.com are remarkable. And you can always check out the Astrologers Roundtable to hear them speak about how they work with people. That's a mini podcast, and you can find that on Spotify, or you can find it, just look up Astrologers Roundtable, or you can find it on the Patreon. You can check it in the show notes. I bring that up because the question I asked the astrologers at our last roundtable, because I host it, I asked, what makes you go to an astrologer? What makes you choose that? Because astrologers go to astrologers, coaches go to coaches, doctors go to doctors. And we do these things. Why? Not because we're not competent. We go to other people because everybody has a blind spot. You are never going to be able to read your chart without bias. You're either going to want to cherry pick it, like, no, those bad things, they couldn't possibly be on the horizon. Or you're going to want to only lean into something that holds you back because of that self-conscious programming. Going to another person who has authority in a subject matter does not make you bad at what you do. In fact, it makes you smart. And we look at each other's charts all the time. They don't just come to me. And what I'm basically saying is they're not chopped liver, okay? So understanding your own authority and your limits. Remember, we've got to know our limits. We are physical, right? Your bone, you can bend your arm this way. You can put it up straight and you can get it a certain degree. But if that sucker flops all the way around, you're in trouble. We have limits to what certain parts of ourselves can do, because this has a job. We can go this way. We can go this way. I know not everybody can do that. But if you're hypermobile, and we'll see that in the chart, we'll see where people have maybe a little more restriction in one area of life, but they have immense mobility in another area of life. That's what the houses show. Those are how you operate within those 12 sectors of life, and you put it all together and it makes a whole human being, or an event, or a coffee cup, or a dog, or a cat, because the chart itself is representative of energy on a day, at a time, and a place, period. Your chart shows how your energy integrates, and Saturn shows how you had early experiences with authority, how you internalized dealing with authority, how you wield your own authority, what your limitations look like, your self-imposed limitations, maybe your social limitations. We can break through those, but we got to massage it, okay? Saturn is not the bad guy. Saturn in transit. And you can check this out in the Planet of the Month Club library. I have a bunch on Saturn in there because Saturn I learned to love. I used to be afraid of Saturn every bit as much as every young astrologer when I first started out. And Saturn is actually a really wonderful energy when we know how to work with it. Nobody likes restrictions. I am restricted in driving. I'm not allowed to drive at night because of my vision. I self-imposed restriction before a doctor ever said, you really shouldn't drive at night. Because I noticed it was getting harder and harder to do it. If I didn't restrict myself, I could have had an accident. I could have hurt someone. Sometimes restrictions aren't a bad thing. They just may not be a fun thing. Saturn isn't exactly known as a fun planet, but it gives us the structure, even within restriction, so we can have fun with limited consequence. When people talk about Saturn being the planet of karma, come on. First of all, there's a very poor understanding of what karma actually is. We are not paying debts over and over and over in this ad infinitum chase of doom. We're not. It can feel like that, especially if you've suffered abuse. You'd be like, man, I must have been some kind of asshole in some kind of way. I must have been a serial killer or a really bad warlord or something. I know in my mid-20s, that's where my mind went with it. Like, I had to have done something really wrong to get that much stuff come at me. But it's not true. Because you're living this life. Why would you carry it over? That makes no logical sense from an energy point of view. Makes zero logical sense. There's consequences in this lifetime. It could be family karma because there's a pattern that has not been broken yet. It could be societal karma because a pattern has not been broken yet. But it doesn't mean you individually invited something in this lifetime. That's blame the victim. Karma doesn't work that way. Okay? You can have good karma. It's cause and effect. If you go around punching people, somebody eventually is going to punch you back. That's karma. If you go around doing good things for people, someday when you need it, somebody might do something good for you. You don't do it for that reason, but I've lived that. I didn't go around doing nice things for strangers because I wanted something back. That was just how I was as a young person. And every single time I needed help, somebody would literally show up out of the blue. Like, I literally got my butt saved to leave the Middle East when I had no way out because I'd done kindnesses for a particular person over many years, and they just showed up. I hadn't seen them in 6 months. They had no idea. We didn't have smartphones. I hadn't been texting, not emailing, nothing. Just showed up out of the blue while I was cooking, which was about normal for them because I'd fed them a whole lot when we were in college, and they were skinny. And I'd say, buy the groceries, I'll cook. And that person assisted me. Got me connected to the right people. Saturn. Cause and effect. Each one of us has the ability to consciously tune in to create structures for ourselves and to understand the structures that best work for us. Now, if you have Saturn in a house, it doesn't mean you're always going to lose in that spot. Like when people have, especially 7th house, because everybody's over-focused on relationships, which, by the way, the chart isn't going to show you who your partner is. It shows what you need in a mutual agreement and how you show up in a relationship. Way more than it shows who's showing up in yours, by the way. By the way. If you have Saturn in the 7th house, doesn't mean you won't ever get married. Could mean that it's somebody who's mature. You need stability. You need commitment. The sign will show the flavor of that. It might show that you commit really soon. It might mean that you require people to go through a series of tests before you commit. Whether it's a best friend, business partner, client, you may do a lot of qualifying on people to see if they fit the bill. And I'm only giving the seventh house as an example because it comes up all the time. But if you're a patron at the $15 level and up, you're going to get your sheet on understanding Saturn and using it in your systems map. Okay? That's really, really important. Understanding how to work with Saturnian energy. When we understand how to use our astrology, then astrology is no longer just another way to stamp a label on your forehead and say, this is your lot in life. It gives us an opportunity to self-actualize, to grow, to self-determine, to become aware of where we are standing in our consciousness. Because the power is in the noticing, and the perfection is in the correction. And that is the mantra. Saturn isn't always the bad guy. And we can look at things that have happened in life and look at transit. So we'll move from the natal to the transit. We'll move from the natal to the transit. But first, let's do some patron shout outs. All right. Every single week, we give a shout out to our newest patrons. And if you want to join the Awake Space community hosted on the Patreon platform, you can save 50% on annual subscriptions at the $15 level and up. Highly recommend. So much content. The magazine, classes, live streams. You guys get a lot of bennies, including discounts on readings with myself and the rest of the astrologers at wokeastrology.com, which is my website. All right, let's do some patron shout outs. All right, we got some patron shout outs here. We've got to thank Lisa Cherney. I may have got your name wrong. Cherney. Aiden, Ellie, or L. Sivim says. Casey, Adriana, Nally, Cameron, Chris, Laura, Jared, Rosie, Kim, Tess, Melv, Kelsey, Hey Crazy, Alexander, JW, Miriam, Alyssa, Carly, Marsha, Kana, Deanna, Rachel, Caitlin, Nicole, Kristen, Nan53, Sharita, Lauren, Gale Force Winds, Caroline, Mel, Amy, Evie, Carrie, Sloan, Jaleel, Lindsay, Alyssa, Nicole, Honey, Joanna, Saf, J Mintz 87, Zen Void, Kelsey, Shirley, Hopeful 1277, Sarah, Spooky Latte, Vale, Adriana, Rachel, Justin, Morgan, Katie, Jade, Alexandra, Nicole, Bethel, Jen, the art teacher, Lilith, Salome, and McKenna. Thank you all for joining the Awake Space community. Lots of good stuff on deck coming up in December. Talk a little bit about that coming up next. So one of the reasons I've been giving you just an understanding of your own system is it helps move through the energy a lot easier. And we've got a lot of energy coming up. I know we're all tired. I know we're sick of it. Me too. We'd all like a little more certainty. But our status quo is forever changed. We're not going back to anything. I think most people have got that figured out, that precedented isn't really what's happening. We're setting precedent as we move forward because, well, things have changed. We're in massive systemic change, and it's going to continue to change for the foreseeable future. But if you understand your own makeup and you don't just pigeonhole yourself of like, well, I'm change resistant, I don't change. Well, you're screwed then because that's what we're going through. It's a better thing to say is I'm reluctant to change. I'm capable of managing through change, but I need to support myself in these ways. Notice the reframe. Remember, Mercury. Get that Mercury trained, and you're better able to shift and sort. It doesn't matter. Having your Mercury trine doesn't mean you never sit down and have an ugly cry. It doesn't ever mean you don't have a moment of burnout. It doesn't ever mean you don't have a moment of reactivity. What it means is it doesn't take you out entirely. What it means is you can recognize, oh, wow, did I react to that? I need to reassess. Okay, because the energies are going to be wild. And we are going to react to those and we're going to resist them. Every single one of us. Again, even the Pope. Okay, even if he is like the Blues Brothers, which I don't know if you guys saw that picture, but I was like, if that's real and not AI, that rocks. But every single one of us struggles and wrestles with things. That's why we have things we believe in. Because sometimes there's no evidence that everything's going to be okay. And we have to lean in to that which sustains us at a soul level. And sometimes that's believing in a deity. And sometimes it's looking at the energy. Sometimes it's knowing how to meditate. Sometimes it's laying on the bed and just surrendering into the moment and letting yourself have that ugly cry, that release. We get to do those things, and it's okay. And teaching the systems mapping so you have a better understanding of your skills so you don't get stuck in a rut. Or if you are, you can pull yourself out. Because we get to build the future forward. There are no precedents. There's building forward. And yeah, there's going to be repeat patterns because human's human. Nothing is completely original. But we get to build with such beauty and freedom. But you can't wait for the outside world to arrange that for you. You build it in you and it radiates outwards. That's why I teach what I teach. Because I know it works and I know it helps. And it gives you skills and it makes life a little bit easier. That's why I changed up how I do my year aheads. This year, I was like, you know what? I'm so tired of just telling shitty news. I don't want people to feel like, why even try if this is on the way? I don't want to feel like that. I don't want other people to feel that way. That's why my year ahead now has preparation. Like, this is how you get ready for this time. This is how you get yourself and your family secure as much as possible. This is how you can work on yourself to meet the moment ahead of time. And then when the big thing happens, you're a lot more ready to manage through it. So the 2026 year ahead is coming up. And if you're a patron, you have a very special discount. I'm going to be putting something out to my mailing list on woke astrology this week. I'm also going to put a public post up this week as well in the Patreon. All right? Just so you know. Just so you know. December 20th. You want to sign up for it. And even if you can't come, and it's long. It's not like an hour. As long as it's specific and I give my predictions about what I think we're going to be seeing. And last year's, there was some really interesting ones. We had the iceberg. That one came in right on time. Icebergs breaking off of Antarctica are hard to predict. That one came in. Bunch of weather predictions. Virgin Mary and Goddess predictions. Those were up all over the place. The Pope having a new... In the spring, there was a temple that collapsed in China. And then there was another one that burned a couple weeks ago. But it wasn't the same prediction. Okay. I like to be on that. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I had a female politician making a statement that would be shocking. Well, there we go. The resignation. These were all things I had in my 2025 year ahead, and many, many more. But getting people prepared for weather, potential seismic activity, political shocks. I'm mostly trying to get people ready to deal with weather and climate, and economics. This is how you prepare yourself economically. So you guys can sign up for that. If you look at the show notes, I can tell you 2026 is it starts out like 2025. It's like there's not a big separation. Some years you end a year and you begin another with a new energy. Not this time. The first half of 2026 is kind of like 2025 2.0. And if you went to the June event because I do it on the solstice every year. Around the solstice, I give my year ahead predictions. So we're 18 months out for some of them. Okay. And the reason I do that is just to show accuracy. And then I do the follow up with a lot more context at the end of the year. And that's what we're doing on December 20th. Even if you can't come, you get a recording. You sign up for that, you get not only the presentation, the seminar, you also get the Q&A. And there's Q&A usually have some really good stuff in there. So nobody else gets the Q&A. I never saw that. So that only goes to people who've attended. If you already attended the 2026 year ahead in June, you should have the link to come to the webinar on the 20th. So if this excites you, get in on it because it tends to sell out fast. So it's important to know how to prepare for things. We can't prepare for everything. Sometimes things come out of left field and you're taken unaware. But if we know that the energy is going to be a little something, we're at least psychologically a little bit prepared for something to occur. Like we'd be like, okay, I know it's going to be crunchy. I don't know how it's going to be crunchy, but I know I may need to be more aware of being nimble on my feet, or I need to know that I have my go bag ready because there might be a physical event. Or I know my pantry's full. Okay, so prices have risen, but I shopped the sales and I've got a really well-stocked pantry. I need to inventory that and see if there's anything else I need to put in there. That kind of thing. You know, this helps us manage life with more ease and grace. And that's kind of the point of me doing what I do. All right, next episode, we're going to be looking at Uranus. No, Uranus. Uranus is actually the Greek Uranus. And I say Uranus on TikTok because I didn't want the Uranus jokes. But in English, we say Uranus. But we'll be looking at that next episode.